Welcome to Roots and Branches of Lehi, the podcast where we get to know the faces, stories, and lives that make up our community. I'm Ryan Harding, and I started this podcast as a way for us all to connect with the people we live alongside. Growing up in a small town, I learned that connections go beyond blood. They're built through shared experiences, friendships, and the moments we celebrate together. Each week, we'll sit down with someone new from Lehi to share their unique story, their passions, and what they love most about living here. So whether you've been here for years or just arrived, join us as we deepen our roots and reach out to our branches one story at a time. Welcome, Rebecca and Betty, to the podcast here, where we're going to talk about the Broadbent family and how you had a store here in Lehi. And now it's a police station, right? It's changed a little bit since then.
It's changed.
So tell me, let's talk about it before it was a police station, but tell me some of your earliest memories, and this would be for both of you, but tell me some of your earliest memories of this store.
For me, we grew up in this store because it was family. It wasn't so much of like a job outside of the house. That was a second home for us.
If you needed to find anybody, they were always at the store.
They were always at the store, and it was just a constant. It was not thought of. I didn't think of it as a place of work. It was just part of our. I grew up there as a toddler and a little girl, and the family was all involved, and so everyone was always there.
And what kind of store was it? What were you selling there?
Everything.
Everything.
So
okay.
Quite legitimately, it was a general store in every respect, and it evolved over the years that I was working there, just because of the times changing and the needs of the general community. But the original founder, he came across from England with the Mormons, and he had been converted, and he came into the country and then joined a handcart company. And he and his wife came across with, I don't remember which handcart, it's in the notes.
Yeah.
But they came across with the handcarts, and they were really devout converts to the LDS Church, and Brigham Young assigned him. When he came into the valley, he said, I want you to go down to the next valley and establish basically a store for resources for the settlements there.
Wow.
And by trade, he was a watchmaker. Mm-hmm. And so his original, they struggled initially. He worked out of a wagon initially because they didn't even have a home, and they lived in kind of a mud hut.
Yeah, a dugout.
Yeah, it was a dugout. That they didn't have a home, like a house, so to speak. The old journals we have, they talked about like the mud dripping.
Oh wow! Just like with rain and stuff.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and he would go around the territory and gather. He'd I don't know. This makes no sense in today's world, but he would gather up watches and clocks that needed repair in the fall, and repair them over the winter, and then deliver them in the spring. So I guess
interesting. They didn't need to know the time in the winter. I guess right.
It seems like what did they do in the meantime? But I'm sure he didn't take everything, and then. Through a series of events, it transitioned into, I believe the original property they purchased was from Porter Rockwell.
Okay.
They purchased property that they farmed from Porter Rockwell, and then that grew into, so his wife, Sarah Dixon, so this is the founders right there. But his wife, she was a seamstress, not by trade, but just because everyone was back then. And she ordered and purchased a riveting machine that would put rivets into clothing. Okay. And so the local miners and farmers, she would make coveralls out of denim and rivet the seams so that they would withhold, over time. That was kind of the original start of the business, was the riveting and the clocks. And then they also started they built a house with a little it was like a 2-room building. They lived in one side, and the other side they put all the clocks and all this stuff, and they offered people who were traveling through the territory could sleep there.
Oh, wow.
You know, like that was another way to make money, is
Yeah,
on
the
that
hotel
side of the,
kind of- yeah.
they could stay with that part of the building. And there's people that would write, they had like a journal where people could write in it during their travels. More often than not, people would be like, we never want to stay here again. The clocks are all ticking. It's incessant. You can't sleep because of the ticking of the clocks. Because he would just have, apparently just clocks hung
Sure.
all the time. Yeah. But then they started, as I understand, they started bringing in supplies
Yeah.
for the
Sugar,
community,
flour.
and would kind of sell or trade those.
Sure.
And the general store part developed out of need. And his son, Joseph, because he was born in, I got to remember, because Joseph Samuel was 1863, so they came across before that. And then as Joseph Samuel got involved with, the whole family was involved with the work, but he, I understand, kind of pushed the development of an official store.
Okay.
And that they established in 1882
Okay.
Broadbent store.
Okay.
And that's kind of how it all.
But before that, it was.
It was still a business.
Yeah.
It just didn't have the
Yeah.
official name and location, and that was the original spot.
Okay.
They were there for 135 years there.
100, was it 35 or 37?
Yeah.
Quite
I thought they tore the store down on it was 135 years, if
Okay.
I remember right, from 1882.
Okay.
And so, and it grew. In fact, for those people who remembered the old store, like this is the old, so at first was just like this part.
Yeah.
And then the brick portion was built in 1890, in the mid 1890s. I'm going to have that.
Okay.
So that was built, and then as the store went on, there was another in the 50s or 60s, they built the front room.
The 50s.
In the 50s. They built another portion on. But this old store, as I understand it, they lived in half of this, but when it was just this.
Okay.
But then when they built the brick portion, the apartment was up above it.
Okay.
And that they lived in until, well, you were there when as a child.
54.
So you actually have memories in the store itself, living there?
Oh, up above?
Yeah. Okay. What was that like?
Well, it was just a common thing. I mean,
That's what you knew,
think-
I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, that's all you knew. So.
Yeah.
They had stories all sorts. So he had, behind it, he had built greenhouses. This is our grandpa.
Okay.
So he had built greenhouses, and he raised mostly carnations. Did he raise, I mean, I know there were other flowers that he would
Yeah.
supply local florists and,
Sure.
and things with. And they have all stories of that. Like there's a barn, and that they kept horses, and
Pigs.
yeah.
So they had a good amount of land too then, just besides that
That
store?
block
Yeah.
that they set up, they owned that whole block. The Broadbent family
Pretty
owned
much.
that. They sold parcels off
Sure.
throughout the years, but even when the city bought it, almost 3/4 of the block Broadbent still owned. It was, there were homes on a couple of pieces, but we owned there was still the barn. The old
Yeah.
barn was still there.
Yeah.
And one of the big fields that was like a garden was still there.
Yeah.
So it transitioned over the years, but yeah, it was kind of just, that was there where they lived. And in the mid-50s is when they bought the house that was over on 2nd North. What was 2nd North and,
Where Grandma lived?
yeah, what was that address?
71 East 2nd North.
Okay.
And that house is now going to be torn down, I guess, because the church has bought it.
Okay.
So that's going to be gone.
So that's going to be gone too now. Okay. They're
We're going to be history.
You're all history. That's right. Well, that's why we're preserving history right now,
That's
right?
good.
That's why we got to have this conversation.
But so the family then moved there,
Yeah.
and the upstairs apartment was turned into an office for the store and
Well,
storage.
They rented it out.
Oh, I didn't realize they
to-
rented it out.
Yeah. Just to couples. it was a job going up the stairs.
So
Okay.
the inside the store, it looks like it's 2 stories, but there's actually a little jump space
Okay.
in between. So you had a flight of years when the apartment was there, the access was here.
Okay.
But when I was a child, you'd go up and there was like a short little office in the middle between the 2 floors.
So it's really 3 floors then.
It really was 3 floors.
Okay.
As a firefighter, it's a nightmare.
Sure, I'm sure. That's right.
But then you've climbed another flight of stairs to get to the apartment.
Yeah.
And
She'd hang the wash. The one room was the washroom.
it was
the old
from
one.
right here.
Okay.
And Daddy had hooked the pulley up, and it went clear out over to the barn. And Mom would hang the clothes on it.
And wheel it.
And the one day she was doing the clothes, and the line broke, and all the clothes went fluttering.
Oh,
and
no.
the band was out practicing on the road, and they all laughed and thought it was so funny. So
Yeah, it just changed a lot. And then the needs, like they sold everything. When I was a child, they sold furniture, clothing, groceries, hardware. They had a meat locker.
Okay.
They sold fabric and dry goods, and
It really was a general store.
it like
Yeah.
literally had
Yeah.
everything. And everything kind of had a section that you just...
And so how long did it serve as a, I mean, well, when did it end? When was it, like no longer actually functioning as a store then? What year was that? Do you remember?
That would have been, what year did they tear down?
I think.
Was
yeah.
it 17? Because that would have been 135 years.
Yeah.
I don't know if we have the pictures in here. I have them in my phone. I sat, the day that it was torn down, I didn't really think it was going to be like that. I actually had brought my daughter up to like a doctor's appointment or something, because I live down by Payson, and we pulled in, and my mom, we were all kind of sitting across the street in the city building parking lot, and I was watching these backhoes. They were like eating
Into
the
that.
store.
Yeah.
I felt like they were these just monsters eating the store, and I couldn't leave. I had to sit and watch it all happen as they would come in and take out pieces of the structure. You could see the rooms inside, and it was really hard to watch, because that was like your whole life.
Yeah.
Just getting eaten away and turned into a pile of rubble.
Yeah. Over 100 years of history, right? Right? Yeah. Yeah. I bet it was a little more emotional than maybe you thought. I guess.
So emotional. I
Yeah.
wasn't expected.
Yeah.
I didn't expect to feel as like moved and just utterly, I sobbed.
Sure.
Watching it happen. I was like,
I'm sure.
I didn't expect that. So it was hard. And my children, my daughter, she got to be in the store quite a lot. But all of them had the opportunity to be there. But
And they'd run around just like it was your house.
Sure.
I mean,
well, that was the thing, is we as kids didn't think of it as anything different.
Yeah.
Because we thought of all the things as just the place we lived.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I remember there was jewelry. They sold jewelry, and that's like a I don't know, 4th or 5th grade girl. I would go in and put on all the jewelry. I'd get behind the counter and I'd put it all on, and Grandma would come and scold me because I had gotten it all out, and I'd have to put all the rings back, and it was mostly costume jewelry, like
Sure.
nothing super
Sure.
valuable.
Nothing-
But as a little girl, it was just.
All these things to play dress up with.
Oh
right?
my gosh,
You
it was
know.
amazing. And they had, I mean, we would crawl underneath all the things and play hide and seek, and we knew all the hiding places and everything. It was, as a child growing up, it was, I didn't know any different, but it was pretty great.
Yeah.
It was pretty great.
And I like those stories. And tell me any other, stories that you can think of from that time, or just those associations with that building, and
Well, I can tell you, so John, my grandpa, that would be my mom's dad.
Okay.
He was just a very, like, civic-minded businessman,
Yeah.
involved in so many aspects of the community. Like he was fire chief for a while, and he was the business portion for him was all customer service. And to be fair, I believe that's really what kept them through all the years of all the ups and downs with economies and everything. Is he believed so much in customer service that as a child, when I was about 12 years old, because we all worked at the store. You had to work at the store. You could not work. It was just expected. And whether
you got
you were
a broom and a duster.
a broom and a duster, you would dust and push and sweep, and that was as soon as you were able, you did. And then I wanted to work the cash register. And it's nothing like cash registers today. It's like the old-fashioned regular cash registers. And my grandpa, there was a stool I could get out to stand up to be able to reach the cash register. And he would, before you were allowed to touch the money, he would run you through like a
Counting change.
Yes, it was. He had to know
Little
that
training program.
you could count the change and that you could respond appropriately to customers.
Yeah.
And
You couldn't just hand it and
no, so
There was a way to do it.
he would bring you items and you'd ring them all up, and then he'd give you a $20 bill, and if it was like $15.68, then he expected you to count back to them up to $20.
Okay.
Every time. There was you never ever didn't count the change back, starting at the amount that the sale was.
Okay.
And so that was something you had to have your brain around to be able to do.
Yeah.
And when you could do that, and you could show that you knew how to like check for all the items on a check, then you were allowed to work the register. And the other thing he was I don't care if the phone is ringing off the hook. If you've got someone standing in front of you, the phone can ring.
They're the
They are standing there to give you their money.
Yeah.
Like you don't answer the phone while you have a customer. Yeah. And I think about that all the time now when I'm in a store, because I'm like, oftentimes you're ignored.
Yes, exactly.
So he was very, and he always wanted the customer to leave feeling like they had a good experience. So he always gave peanuts or chocolates.
some of our customers commented. I mean, they'd be roaming through the store, and they say, "This is better than Prozac."
Yeah, because it was just
What was some of the other comments they would make?
just that they felt like it was a place they could relax and enjoy browsing, which I don't know that happens as much today in today's world, where you just go browse just for the sake of browsing. And my grandmother, his wife, she was a salesman like that. She could sell
Ice cubes to Eskimos.
she could make you feel like you needed it.
Sure.
And she could talk to anybody. She could talk to anybody, and they were quite a good pair as far as both sides of the business. And so it was they had some good.
Well, that's, a long time. You think about it, to run a store, because I understand why it maybe started in the beginning with, you said Brigham Young, and there was no competition at the beginning,
Yes,
right? It was, hey, this is probably the only shop in town, let's start this. But for it to continue on 100 plus years, obviously they were doing something right? Because otherwise, I'm sure there was other places.
Well, they were married kind of at the height of the Depression.
1938.
1938.
Okay.
And so John and Alice got married, and they were both relatively young. Mm-hmm. And that first year for them, because everyone was on hard times.
Yeah.
And my favorite story, because I wrote it up for the newspaper one time, there was their first Christmas, the 1938 Christmas. So they had just been married. Yeah. And it was their Christmas, and they had, throughout the day, they had made, I need to reference the story, they had made almost $100.
Okay.
And I don't remember.
Isn't it in there?
I don't remember exactly how much.
Oh, yeah,
it's in
it
this
was
one.
about $100.
It was almost $100. It was right here. So they were, it was due to close. They had made $98 for the day.
Wow.
And that was just a landmark Christmas Eve. It was Christmas Eve.
Okay.
And it was closing time, but they talked with each other and they said, why don't we just stay open and see if we could make $100 for the day? And they decided to stay open a little bit later, and Clyde Dorton was his name. Mm-hmm. Had just gotten off work.
A couple of houses down this block.
He had gotten off work and he needed something for his son, a gift. And he came in, he was so glad they were open. And so he looked around and he found a metal school bus with rubber school tires, with rubber tires on this metal school bus. And it was like a toy. It was a school bus, right?
Yeah, big yellow school bus.
And, no. A blue metal school bus.
Oh.
I'm reading it now. Sorry, we're a little...
You're good.
And it was about 18 inches long, and all the doors opened, and all the little windows opened. And Clyde said, I think I want that. How much is it? And she took the bus down, and the price tag was $2. And so his sale got him to $100 on their first Christmas Eve.
Oh, that's awesome.
And Christmas Eve at that store was magical, and there is just no other way. I have yet to find, like, it was, part of it was our staff and our family, and just it was so great. But customers coming in and everyone was so just happy, like it was everything.
Everybody was genuine.
Mm-hmm.
The genuine love for people.
Oh gosh,
time,
Grandpa.
you know.
And that was Grandpa's thing, is Grandpa John, it didn't matter if you were the 12-year-old kid coming in to buy a stick candy, or if you were a lady coming in to buy fabric, or it didn't matter. He was genuinely interested in how was your day, and how, like, what can we do for you today? And everybody got shipped off with peanuts or chocolates or something, and his thing was you want to make sure they want to come back. And I think, like, as I talk to people who have good memories of the store, that's what it was, more than our merchandise, more than a lot of the other things. It was just
the atmosphere.
Yeah, the atmosphere that we wanted you to come back, and we wanted you to feel welcome all the time.
And Mom would carry on with the customer.
At one point, if she'd get a hold of your arm even,
and wouldn't let go.
Yeah, you got the 10-cent tour.
Yeah.
Whether you wanted it or not. But it was a big deal. The Christmas at the store. It was the display windows. We tried to make very nostalgic, because as you would walk. When I lived here in Lehi, one of my favorite things on Christmas Eve night, after it was dark, and it was to walk, and usually it was snowing, and just walk past the store, because it just felt like you would step back in time, and everything was quiet, and it was so great.
Grandma had a big nativity set.
Oh yeah, the nativity set in the store window was a thing that drew people every year, because her nativity set had been carried through generations, quite literally. Yeah. Like the original set, she had added many pieces. It was a conglomeration of lots of sets. But the space that it took to set it up in the window, how big was that window? 12 feet by 8 feet, maybe?
I'm thinking 15 feet.
It was, and we had platform built to put this nativity on, and she was very
haul it all out and then
haul it all back in. The original nativity set was from Germany, back in before the war.
Wow.
Yeah, that it was an old set from Germany, and then the other pieces were just from all over the world.
It had the elephant and the camels and all the shepherds, and
it was a beautiful set. She would set it up, and we had the story from Matthew printed out really beautifully, and they were very adamant that was center focus of the windows of the store, because I mean, Grandma and Grandpa were both very, very devout Christians, and they were strong members of the LDS Church, and they had, I mean, that was a family that was brought here by the LDS Church, and even my grandpa's dad, Joseph Samuel, went on a mission. He, in the mid, what year? It was mid 1890s.
Yeah.
He left this all and went overseas back to England for a mission for the LDS Church.
Wow.
And they would write letters. We have the letters. They would write back and forth. And which sister was it? Now I got to look. Sarah. That was it. No.
Sadie.
Sadie. One of his sisters. So this is the Joseph Samuel. This is the patriarch.
Okay.
So he's getting very aged in these years. He's now gone to England, and the sister, was it Geneva?
Oh.
That wrote the letter. So he's in England, and she writes a letter that says the diphtheria is here, and no one will come into the store because the baby was sick, and one of the sisters was sick, I think. Mm. I wish I was really good at remembering all of this, but she wrote a letter, and just to him to say, like, I hope like the store is going to fall apart, and our dad's probably going to die, the baby's probably going to die, no one's coming, we're not going to be able to eat.
I'm half sick.
We're all starving to death.
Yeah.
And I sent that letter, and of course it has to go through all the ship over the ocean, so it's months. And his response came, it was almost 6 months later, because that's the way it worked.
How long it took.
And he was like, have no fear. The Lord has assured me everything's going to be fine. And it was. Everybody was fine. But like the store made it through the diphtheria outbreak,
and
which
the
was
Depression, and World War I and World War II.
Yeah.
Which were some hard times.
Yeah.
And they made it because the model was more about like, what does the community need, and how can we best provide that? And Grandpa told me all the time, if people weren't able to pay, well, they all had open tabs for people, which we had for years. People could just buy on credit. He also would take exchange for goods. Like during the Depression, he talked about how like local farmers would bring eggs in exchange for other things they needed, and it was very much, you had to be aware of what the community needed in order to, you couldn't just have a model and just say that was it. It had to be fluid and adjusting to the needs of the community.
Yeah, he adapted very well, it sounds like. For
as long as, I make the joke all the time that the store survived everything, the wars, the Depression, the outbreaks, the epidemics. It couldn't survive the internet.
Yeah, sure.
It would break my heart when people would come in and they would start searching for an item to see if they could find it cheaper online. And I remember the first hint of it was when Walmart came in, and we weren't really concerned because we didn't carry a lot of the same things. Sure. But we did carry this brand of embroidery thread. This sounds so ridiculous. But we carried a brand of embroidery thread that we had carried forever. Yeah. And at Walmart, they were selling it cheaper than what the company would sell it to us for, wholesale. And we would ask our rep, like, how is this possible? And they were like, well, Walmart agrees that if we give them that price, they will buy this huge bulk. And so they've kind of secured it for them. And that's when I remember we took that rack. We couldn't compete with that. Yeah. We were losing money to sell it at that price. Yeah.
Their buying power was so much greater than yours.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
Yes. And that was the biggest difference is, I don't think anyone understands that back when I was in even high school in the 80s and 90s, we didn't have a huge storage house. Like at the end of Christmas in January, people every year would say, "Are you guys closing?" Our shelves were empty because we were bringing in new stuff because we had sold it all.
Yeah. You only had so much inventory.
Yes, and that was just the way that was the circle of like how it business. Yeah. We would bring the new things in and sell them, and then bring the new things in and sell them, and it was never it was never like just a constant supply. It was like sometimes we couldn't find things again. They were gone and they were gone.
Yeah.
But
And the people got to where they loved to come to the store.
Yeah.
And they dreaded Walmart.
Sure.
which I think part of that was just the service.
Well, I was going to say, it's the people, it's the connections, right? I mean, it's that small town, hey, I know who these people are. I like being with them. Yeah, yeah.
I think that's probably the hardest part is that that's gone.
We do make some, I mean, that's an interesting point because we do make some trade-offs. I mean, you mentioned that fabric, is cheaper and stuff like that. And so, hey, we all enjoy a better selection of things for a cheaper price now, right? But, there are some things that are lost in that advancement, right? We live in we don't know people as well as we used to, right?
No, and there's no interpersonal.
Exactly.
Like there used to be.
Well, like the teller at the bank or something like that. We all had to go to the bank. Now, I don't step in a bank very often at all anymore because I can deposit checks with my phone or something. You know what
heavens,
I mean?
yeah.
So
up until it was, what year was it that we had to, I helped manage the books for the store, and it would have been 2005, 2000, like this is pretty late in the game, but we were still using big ledgers that were like the big
I know
and they were heavy. We'd go to the accountant and it was like you needed a wheelbarrow to carry the ledgers in. And my grandpa, I did it all by pencil. My mom did it too. You had to write every transaction and carry the balance forward, and it was just these huge ledgers. And at one point the accountant was like, I'm not going to take ledger. I need it digital.
We got to move on. Excel.
And
have you heard of it?
Even then Grandpa was like, we're not going to go completely digital. We're going to do the ledgers and we'll do QuickBooks.
Sure.
And that was a nightmare trying to get those two to jive with each other. And so it was just, but we did it all like the old.
And he had to have everything balanced to the penny.
To the penny. It was never.
I mean, you'd spend
4 hours finding 3 pennies.
Where'd that money go? Where is it?
Yep. And that was a thing. He wanted to know where every penny went. Mm-hmm. And he was so good with his finances that, in fact, when we would go to market, there were markets in LA, Chicago, and Dallas where we would go buy merchandise for the store. And when we would see a new line of merchandise that we would like, we'd go in and they usually had you apply for a line of credit and all of the things. And Grandpa wanted everything purchased. Like, we don't want credit. We're going to buy it. And we'll write a check for it. And they didn't want that. They were like, what are you talking about, a check? But that was how Grandpa did for years. It took a long time for him to even agree to a credit card for the store, because it just the way that he felt. And I think there was something to it because of what he had been taught by his dad as far as managing your money and your business and your life.
And he always says that there was a difference between want and need.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It was.
And he left us kids with a lot of responsibility at times, as I think back. But they'd leave and go to the California market, Mom and Daddy would, and leave us kids home to do the store. And we were still in school. High school.
They trusted you enough, though.
I guess, yeah.
Which is good, though. That means you were able to learn responsibility at a younger age.
Yeah. So we had to go open the store, get it all set up, and then go to school, and then come home and take care of it, and then close it up and start all over.
It was never, you never got, time off.
Yeah.
I mean, it was an ordeal to go on a vacation.
Yeah.
Oh.
But we had really good help. We
did.
Such good employees. They stayed with us for
years.
Ever.
Yeah.
And we had, how long did Arlene work there? 30 years?
At least.
And Arlene, I don't know if Arlene ever took home a paycheck. She would on her tab buy things, take things, and then you'd settle it at the end of the month with a paycheck. And I think she just got paid in merchandise.
Sure. Yeah.
But it's we had Oh gosh, we had the best employees, but they were all
Yeah.
family to me.
It was not like a job because everybody, all of us loved each other. There was no bickering, no backbiting. We just didn't have any of that.
You didn't, well, when I was in high school, because they lived at the house just a block away, up on 2nd North, and I would go up with Grandma, and we'd fix sandwiches or, gosh, whatever the food was, if it was soup.
Whatever was in the fridge.
Yeah, whatever we fixed. And we fixed it for everybody's lunch.
Yeah.
And I would take this rubber tub with a dish towel over it full of sandwiches and other foods, carry it down to the store for everyone to have lunch. And that was just the way it went. And Grandma fed
And
everybody.
you ate it.
I'm sure, yeah.
Yeah.
And she made meatloaf sandwiches.
Which
a lot of the
they were
time.
the best. It would be unheard of now, I think, for an owner of a store to just go and do
Yeah.
that. But you just fed everyone.
Oh,
And
yeah.
she would have these, she'd go, as she got older, she just would go sit at the store and
On the bench.
greet everyone and try to, talk with everyone. And that was, she loved that.
She'd snag on your arm and walk with you through the whole store. So if you were in a hurry,
Gotta watch out.
Right, right.
take a detour.
I mean, what else? I don't know what else to say.
Well, so we can shift gears a little bit. So
Okay.
I mean, so obviously the store is closed, right? But tell me, obviously this was a part of your lives for so many years for both of you, part of your family. I mean, you have a lot of heritage here and stuff like that. How, what principles from that time, what things that you've learned are you still applying to your life now, where you're living a life without the store, but the store was only a part of your life, right? And stuff like that.
It taught us to live the way we are.
Okay.
Like to work hard and live as think of more than yourself.
Okay.
I think that was the biggest thing. And in order for that business to be successful, you had to think of what the community needed. And Grandpa did that in every way. Like all of his civic involvement and his love for the fire department, and it was all about cultivating and caring for the community that you lived in. And I think that is what made them so prominent in the community, was because people could tell that they loved this. They loved Lehi. They loved the whole area. And
which I think is great. I mean, that I think that's exactly right. I mean, as far as if I were you and to remember those times, because there's so much history there, and that's a great application into your life now that can be applied to whatever you end up doing, or whatever kids, grandkids, and stuff like that end up doing. Is, hey, we want to be part of the community, we want to serve, and there's benefits to that, I guess, right? And
yeah.
And just loving people. I think that's what it sounds like he did a lot. She did a lot, right? Just loving people and stuff. But I love that. I think that's a great history.
And then just the determination of just hard work.
Yeah.
There was never, I mean, I credit my parents and my grandparents for, I've never been in a situation where I was like I've always thought hard work I can get out of it with hard work.
Yeah.
And things were never so bad that I couldn't hard work my way out of it. And I think that is really credited to that whole lifestyle that we had. And there was never we need to hire this professional. It's like,
We can do that.
well,
Yeah.
I mean, good heavens. It was, but I mean, part of the reason I feel like I am where I'm at is because of their influence. And I know, I mean, I could say the cooking, I learned to cook, not because of any classes, but because of my mom and my grandmother specifically. And it's the whole reason because I work as a firefighter in another city, and the guys are always they love it when I cook, and I'm always giving credit to these other women because I'm that's why I know how to cook. Yeah. But it's you learned, and there was not, as a child, it wasn't oh, let's make this let's cater to this child. It was, you're going to come along with me while I do my work. And that's how you learned how to do it.
A little apprenticeship,
and
I guess.
There wasn't this idea that we need to create this special separate world for a child. It was that they were going to be with us
And be taught.
and to be
how
taught,
to work.
not in a direct fashion, but just through,
This is what we do.
yeah.
This
And
is our
that's,
family's tradition.
I mean, everything that the majority, I think, of all of the kids that grew up in the Broadbent family, it wasn't like bad that you were working. It was part of the fun, and it was you were given responsibility based on your skill level, and so it was almost like a reward when you got given more responsibility.
It doesn't sound like work was, a chore. It was actually like, hey, yeah, let me do this, and because work is fun and can be good and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it sounds like that's what it was in your family.
It was really great. And I mean, Grandpa, all he had to do back when we were really young and we were dusting, we would dust. They had a whole canned food section, and all the canned food needed to be facing forward and lined up on these big, long white shelves. And you'd have to set everything off and wipe all the shelves once a week and then reset it all back on. It was this whole process, and he would pay us. They were the entire length of the grocery room, these shelves. And for each shelf you got done, you got 10 cents. So 10 cents a shelf. And it took, 2 hours to do a shelf? Maybe an hour. I don't know. It felt like, as an 8-year-old, it felt like eternity.
I'm sure. And for 10 cents.
But for 10 cents. But then you would also get, I don't know, this is going to date me. You got a Jell-O pudding pop.
Okay.
They've not been around for years.
They haven't, no.
But it was an ice cream that was made out of Jell-O pudding. And he had a big freezer case full of ice creams, and if you got your shelf all done, you could take a break with a Jell-O pudding pop. And that was enough.
That was a good
that
reward.
Was the reward.
Yes.
The 10 cents and a Jell-O pudding pop. And
Yeah.
it was a big deal. And
You were never overpaid with money.
Merchandise was
it really was. Even me, like the things, because we would bring in merchandise, and the store transitioned over the years from a general store to more of some specialty type items. So we carried fabric. Fabric was a big deal with like the quilting community. And there were a few items of clothing that we maintained because they were dresses that weren't really sold anywhere else.
House dress.
They called them house dresses.
Okay.
I don't know
Yeah.
if they
Yeah.
button down. So we carried those. We carried baptism dresses for little girls and blessing dresses, and that was unique to the community. There weren't a lot of stores that provided those.
Yeah.
They were often like christening gowns or quinceañera type gowns, which they didn't quite fit because the ages were different.
Yeah.
Like our christening gowns had to be tiny because in the LDS community, you bless a brand new baby and they are 6 months, 8 months, a year old.
Yeah.
And so we had one company in New York that would make the dresses just for us.
Okay.
And we didn't sell that many that they would just be able to supply a ton, but they did it for us. And we had another company, because Grandpa was very much like little girls. We didn't want these little strappy dresses for little girls. We wanted something modest and
wholesome. Yeah.
And so we would go to these markets, and all the dresses would have these little. And I was like, well, I can't buy those. My grandpa would not. He won't sell them. Yeah. You have to have sleeves. They have to have some sort of covering of their shoulder. Yeah. And the one company started doing it just for us, putting little sleeves on their dresses just for us. That's awesome. And we would buy in sets of like 12, not like 400 dresses.
We weren't Walmart.
Yeah,
No.
you weren't. Yeah, you didn't have the pockets.
And because that was our first question, is what is our minimum order? Because we always, it was usually the minimum that we would buy, because we didn't have storage for it, and we didn't overextend ourselves financially that way. So,
And when we did go to market, the company reps, they, I don't know if they'd tear their hair out at times.
frustrated with us, for sure.
But Nan and I, and my girls that went, we always knew what we needed and what we wanted. And
We were very specific because we had limited space and
Yeah.
limited, we didn't just buy things in huge bulk.
Yeah.
We looked at everything with a magnifying glass.
Sure.
And if they only had photos, we were much less likely to buy it. We needed to see
The product.
whatever
Yeah.
the product was. I needed to hold it. We wanted to look at it, look at the quality. And that was part of the reason people loved our merchandise, is because we were very, very.
And they say, where do you find all this?
Yeah. Well, we took a lot of time to find it sounds like.
It was a lot. And then every single item as it came, this doesn't happen anymore. I know it doesn't happen, because boxes would come in, the shipments of that merchandise we bought, and every single thing was inspected. And if there was a flaw or damage, it got returned.
Sure.
We didn't just put boxes on shelves.
Yeah.
Ever. It was, we got, the big thing was UPS is here. So it had traveled through the store. UPS just dropped off how many? They've dropped 12 packages. Because that meant we had 2 people at least in the back room opening and inspecting every item.
Yeah.
We'd never just put it away, because
No.
we were not going to be
If it
sold
was
something that
damaged or
had a flaw. And oftentimes you'd call the rep or the company and say, like, oh, we got, the paint is all wrong, or something's, and they'd be like, okay, we'll just credit it back, but just keep it. Because they didn't, the hassle of returning
and
was
stuff,
worse.
yeah, and the cost.
And so it was a huge process to go through everything. But if it had a flaw, their grandpa and grandma, they were not going to sell it, or they were not going to sell it at the
retail.
regular price. Yeah. And so they were which most of my Christmas decorations and the things I took home were things that were flawed or broken.
that's for your
Here's for your Christmas.
inheritance.
Yeah.
Because Grandpa did not want things out on the floor that were not good quality. Well, like Tell City.
Yeah.
When we sold furniture, Grandpa was just
Hard
adamant.
rock maple.
It had to be hardwood. It had to be fully wood furniture. He was not going to have anything that was cheaply put together.
Yeah.
And there was a company, were they Chicago? Was Tell City in Chicago? I'm going to get it wrong. But they were a company, a family-owned company just like us.
Yeah.
And they made hardwood furniture. And Grandpa met their patriarch at a market. And he was all in. And so we sold Tell City. There were a few companies he would buy, Riverside and Tell City.
Yeah.
And there was a few because they made good, but Tell City was special because they were like us. They had a family-run business, and they were, quality was important. And I remember those shipments had to come on train. So it was a big
You had
deal.
to go up to Salt Lake and
Go pick them up there.
go to the dock. And
Yeah, it was but when Tell City went out of business, I remember feeling like that's like there goes another one. Like they're gone, and it was heartbreaking. But there's companies here that Grandpa was like that with, like Sweets Candy. Sweets Candy, he was their family's like our
Yeah.
family. Like Grandpa knew, what was his name? His last name was Sweets, right?
I don't know if that was their name, but that was their company name.
But they ran it just like a business, and they did it just like our business, and it was all family. And I I got to go a couple times and go see all the candy making machines, and they have like candy making things from like the turn of this, I shouldn't say the turn of the century, the 1800s to the 1900s
Yeah.
turn of the century. And I remember going up there to pick up things from, because we'd go pick it up in person from Sweets, and you'd go in their office, and their office looked just like our office, because
Yeah.
it was covered in calendars and sticky notes and reminders, and
Powdered sugar
it I did have powdered sugar everywhere.
and startups.
Oh, am I thinking of startups? I might be confused. Is that
Well-
startups candy?
Startup was a family.
That's the one I'm thinking of. Sweets, I think, might be too, but Grandpa was.
Sweets was in Salt Lake. Startup was in Provo.
That's the one I'm thinking. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
Okay.
Grandma knew Harry Startup.
Harry Startup.
Okay.
Hey,
Okay.
Harry.
I think I might have toured Sweets as well, but they were all very much relatable. Like Grandpa's big desk was a door, wasn't it?
Yes.
It was a door on filing cabinets that a big plate glass,
Yeah.
thing of plate glass was put on the door, and beneath, and it was
Tucked all his.
every note, every quote that he wanted to remember, it was all,
Yeah.
he'd lift the glass and put it under there, and so you could see it all. And then when you needed to, like phone number, you'd go up and look at the desk to make sure where everything was.
Yeah, it was an education.
So yeah, it was, Grandpa, he did a lot of reading. He was a very well-read man, and it was good.
So now that it's a police station, they have put your name on the police station, right?
Yeah.
Tell me how that helps you cope with, I guess, the loss of the store. But tell me how you feel about the fact that your name and that time will still live on in some degree.
I'm just so happy the city bought it, had a need for it. We had a lot of companies come in and want to buy it.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, no, I'm not doing that, because I knew there was too much work that would go into it to
Yeah.
keep it up. And so when the city approached us and says they wanted it they were going to develop it and make a big police station, I knew then that, I says, that's great, because we'll have grass and flowers and
Yeah.
flags, and it'll always be maintained.
Yeah, no, it's a very beautiful building, actually.
Yeah,
They did a good job with
it
it.
is.
They have that. In the Broadbent room, there's a whole display of items
Yeah,
and
it has
and
the old
pictures.
nativity, and
hmm
it has a lot of different things.
And really that, I know, like, there's some of those things that people were like, why didn't you want to keep that, and why didn't you, and really a lot of that really belonged to the community at that point.
Yeah.
It belonged to the city, not because my grandparents gave it to them, but because that was the reason they displayed it. And it would be wrong to have it just be in someone's house now.
Well, so many more people get to enjoy it then, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's the love. I mean, that's what I'm hearing from you, is that they loved the community, and that's what kept them in business for so long. And so, to your point, it makes sense that would then be part of the community, because
Absolutely.
that's what they did. And it's not necessarily, it was a family business, but it was a family serving the community. So you wouldn't want to just keep it for the family, because hey, the family was always in service of the
Yeah.
community, is what I'm hearing.
I 100% agree. I
Yeah.
feel like, and even the masonry, because they maintained some of the masonry in that room, and I feel like people don't know the background there either, because it was Grandpa's brother, Andrew Fjeld. Was he the brother?
Oh,
I'm gonna have to look. So
He married
the sister. So he was a brother-in-law.
Yeah.
So, of Joseph Samuel Broadbent. The brick portion of the store, this portion,
Yeah.
that there's the masonry from that there's still some of it in that Broadbent's room.
Okay.
That was erected by Joseph Samuel Broadbent's brother-in-law, Andrew Fjeld. And he was a mason.
Yeah.
and that
He did the old Fifth Ward Church.
Okay.
for those people who might remember that. He also was one of the prominent masons on what's now the Center Street Temple in Provo, but
Okay. Yep.
it was
The Tabernacle.
Tabernacle at
Yeah.
the time. And he also traveled building sugar beet factories, wasn't it?
No, that was Granddad Davis.
That was Granddad. See, if I didn't have her
That's
here,
why it's good we have
she's
both
here
of you.
because
Yes, yes.
But Andrew Field was a very prominent Mason
Yeah.
that did a lot of work for the LDS Church.
Yeah.
And-
He was state patriarch.
Yes.
Forever.
We actually have both Grandma and Grandpa's patriarchal blessings.
Hmm.
Were they both done by Andrew Field? I thought so.
Both Nan and David. By the
But-
time I got old enough,
It
he had passed
right here.
on.
I think this is it. Yep, that's his signature.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
So those are both of the. But he was a very prominent member
Oh, yeah.
of this area as well. But like that masonry, that's a skill that's not, and there's very, very few people that understand the value in that to erect a building that was built out of bricks, not a frame and then bricks, but
Yeah.
like built out of bricks.
Yeah, just the exterior, the pretty
Yes,
part.
yeah, that's not just a facade, and have it last 135 years.
Yeah.
Like that's a big deal. I mean, the tabernacle, I mean, that survived a fire.
Yes, it did. Yes, it did.
And it's still standing.
Yeah.
And so I think like that speaks to the whole family just building this community kind of. And so that's part of it. I don't even think that people realize that when they see that masonry.
So you're saying inside the room itself.
The wall that is built out of, don't they have a brick wall that's out of the masonry from the store?
Okay. So the brick wall in that room.
I think it was rebuilt.
Okay.
So it's not like the original wall.
Sure, but it's using the
they
bricks.
took the bricks and then
Yeah.
they put them up to rebuild it.
That's
so
awesome that they were
so
able to do
it's
that.
not like the original wall. But
Yeah.
that part of the reason that the store we were at that point of selling is because it had been grandfathered in over all these years for fire, code and everything. And people were like, couldn't you get it protected by the Historical Society? But we had to constantly update the building.
We would adapt areas to what we wanted them to do.
And they all had to be handicap accessible because you're a business.
yeah.
And so when you've modified the building, the Historical Society is like, no.
Yeah,
and-
we ruined that a long time
Right.
ago.
Well,
Sure,
to
sure.
stay in business, you had to.
Yeah.
But then the masonry was to the point where it wasn't, in the event of a catastrophic earthquake or fire, it wouldn't be
Wouldn't have been able to
safe.
hold up,
And
sure.
and to the cost of trying to rebuild would have just demolished
Yeah.
the whole. I
And
mean,
the insurance.
well, that the store had all. I mean, they had the only overhead they had was their utilities.
Sure.
Because they owned all their merchandise. They owned
and
everything.
And the building, there was no
property.
mortgage on the building.
So to think about spending a few $1 million to
Yeah.
rebuild the store didn't fit with what the store was about anyway, because we couldn't keep things the way it was. And so at that point, even when other businesses were like, well, it would have ruined it.
Well, because the whole point, that's your field, that's what you've built it on, and so that makes sense. No, and I guess there's a lesson there too. I mean, there's a time and a season for everything,
Yeah.
right? And that filled a big role for 100 plus years.
Yeah.
But things do change.
Everything progresses and
Yeah.
changes, and whether we think it's for the good or not, it's the way of our lives, and
Correct.
we have to adapt with the way things go. And I know, like, I treasure the fact that I got to be part of it.
Yes.
But I'm sure everyone had their upbringing that was great. When people come and talk to me and tell me their memories of being at the store, it's so great because I remember that.
Yes.
And
Yeah. No, it's a special place for you.
yeah.
Well, it touched a lot of lives.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is why I'm glad that it's still part of the community. It's in a different shape, now it's
But I'm so happy
Yes.
it's what it is.
Yes.
I mean, we were getting to the point we couldn't do it.
The city has done a beautiful job and then a lot of our artifacts we donated to the museum. And so the museum has a whole display of things from the store, because over the years the store had all sorts of things, and we had things as we went through. The task of getting that store ready to be torn down was overwhelming.
Sure.
And we found things that we were like, we don't know what to do with this. Like, we don't know if we should, because we can't really keep it.
There were some things that we thought would sell. I mean, we kept part,
Yeah.
but that was more than anybody needed, so we'd sell. And Dixie and Howard,
They were probably our longest standing customers.
they came, they're in PG, and they came over 3 different times in a day.
Yeah.
They'd say, oh, we got home thinking about this and we think we need it. And off they'd come back over, and then all of a sudden they'd be back again. I mean, we just laughed and had so much fun with everybody.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. There a lot of people purchased things that were just memorabilia to take home, because we were like, we don't know what else to do with it. And then it got to the point we were going through boxes and cabinets full of things that hadn't been opened in 50 years. And we found the $5 bill from, was it 1934? We found a lot of old things that were just tucked away. And one of them, we had all these boxes. So the store they sold LDS scriptures, and they had the press that they could put your name on it with foil, with gold foil.
Yeah.
And the type set for that came in these little wood boxes that were about this big. And so they had a
Little
dozen
compartments.
little tiny typeset that you'd have to set by hand.
Yeah.
And when you took all of that out, the box was just a wooden empty box. And I bet we had 20 of those boxes sitting up there, and they were all just full of receipts and things that were not really necessary. And we were kind of getting, and I picked one up, and I was like, I got to go through everything because I don't want to miss something. And I opened one, and there's these other little boxes, and I opened them, and these are pre-Civil War tintype photos of my grandmother's family.
Wow.
And I'm like,
These are good.
These probably shouldn't be in a box
Yes,
here.
yeah.
I don't know what we should do with these, but not this.
Yeah, take care of these.
And so, but it was like that was what we did. We would go through it, and it was just
No stone unturned.
everything. But then you'd find something you were like, oh my goodness, like this has been hiding here this whole time, and it's just all the years that was just built up.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of that, and it's it was cathartic to be able to go through everything to get ready.
Well, I just wanted to make sure we had gone through everything and didn't over.
Yes, and miss something.
And
So-
the furnace room.
So there was the store was heated. The majority of the store was heated with a boiler. And it was in our back room, which had been converted because over the years it had been a meat locker and other things. But excuse me, the boiler was down about 3 or 4 steps into this little concrete cement space that had a couple of shelves, of course, for storage because we didn't have any storage. But it was very warm always in that room.
Yeah.
And Grandpa, he'd go out and shovel snow, and then he'd go sit on a lawn chair in that room. If you couldn't find him in the winter, it's where he
That's
was.
where
He
he
was
was.
in
Yeah.
he was in the
He's
furnace
in
room.
the furnace room.
Warming up after all that snow shoveling.
Because if you were cold, that was the place to get warm.
Sure.
It was a cozy warm.
Yeah, Grandpa had a little.
And they
Lawn
had the
chair.
radiators upstairs on the 3rd floor for the heat. And Daddy would be downstairs tending the store, and Mom was upstairs with the kids.
Yeah.
But when he'd get busy, he'd take the yardstick and tap on the pipe.
To relay the message.
I need some help. So,
Yeah, people don't know what radiators are. Like, we'd have to go vent them
yeah.
and let them hiss every morning. You'd go around and vent all the radiators so that the heat would start.
Yeah.
That was a big
you
deal.
could just feel the heat come out.
Yeah.
And the upstairs maintained the heat really well. So it was good. It was good. But I think every kid in the family worked there at some point.
Oh, yeah.
It was kind of a
I think Grandpa wanted to feel like he did his service by teaching the kids how to work.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Which it sounds like he did.
I think so.
This has been great, to learn. I've learned a lot. I didn't know a lot of this stuff, so thanks for letting me be a silent participant in this, I guess, a little bit, right? But tell me, is there anything, before I get to, I have a concluding question for you, I guess, but any other things that we haven't covered that you wanted to cover?
I mean, Grandma had fashion shows at the store, and we did for years. While I was part of the fire department, we were one of the main supporters of their Sub for Santa program, and we did this whole, for years we did that, the tree raffle, and they, every year in the Lehi miniature parade, we put a float in.
pretty much.
Yeah, and it was at the miniature parade, the wards could do the floats as well, but it was also a time that businesses could kind of advertise.
Sure.
And so it's kind of evolved past that.
Yeah.
And I don't know what else. I think there's just so much.
And you've hit a lot of it. Yeah, no, this has been great, like I said. So let me ask you this concluding question then. So this is Roots and Branches is the name of the podcast, right, of Lehi. And so we've been learning about your roots, right? And so I guess you could argue you're the branches of, of these roots, right? You've been able to do it. But so on a personal level, how has, I guess going back and learning about these things and knowing these things, having that history, having that heritage, how is that affecting your life now in the way that you live your life and different things like that? What's the application to yourselves now with this rich heritage that you have? You have a rich heritage, a long history here in Lehi. You've helped shape this community. How is that affecting your life now?
Well, I think it affected how we raised our own families, what we taught them and what we expected of them, of the kids. And I don't know, I just think everything that we ended up doing was a lesson that we learned. I don't.
Yeah, I think, I mean, for me, I see it in how, like, in everything that I do, and as far as just.
And I see it daily when we go to the drive-up windows and they hand you your change back.
You're like, you're doing it wrong.
I taught my kids how to count change. I did do that. I
That's
taught
awesome.
them how to count change. But I think, like, all of it, just the ingenuity and the determination and, like, the spirit of not letting things stop you or get you down. And
Grandma Alice, there was nothing she couldn't do or wouldn't do.
Well, and she did. She was just good at everything.
Yeah.
I felt like. And
I mean, everybody else would say, well, I can't do that. I don't know how.
And she'd find a way.
And she'd find a way.
Mm-hmm.
And Grandpa, as incredibly influential as he was the most soft-spoken, humble, just utterly, like, example of a Christian that you could find. I think he
And Grandma. Good hell, John.
My grandmother had a mouth like a sailor sometimes. But she had a lot of spunk, and she could do, like we said, she could do anything.
She would accomplish.
And nothing's, and I think that's
impossible.
That's, I think, if anybody who lives in Lehi, if they can remember that, like, where Lehi started and where it came from, that's a big deal. I love Lehi so much. I mean, I grew up here, but also I just know so much about the history here because of that family.
Yeah.
And
well, in the story, just were associated with it all the time on what's going on down on Main Street, or I mean, we weren't on the main track, but whatever was going on, we were always involved.
a part of it. Yeah. I I feel like people probably feel like this about wherever they grew up, but I definitely, I love the community here, and I love all of the
And we know so
things.
many of the people.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's because of that, because they were so involved. And I started with Lehi Fire back many years ago, and now I'm with another city. But I always it would be to come back to Lehi Fire. I would do you know what I mean? That would probably be the only place that could get me to change jobs, because
Yep.
I just love this community, and it's my whole family's here. My siblings and everyone's here, and it's
You feel like you're home.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Even though it's totally different. Totally different. I mean, when I graduated high school, I think my graduating class was 170.
Wow.
Yeah,
a little different. Yeah.
I had friends that rode their horses to school in high school because they were part of the FFA.
Sure.
When we got the very first stoplight, I remember that. I remember, things have changed a lot since then.
Yeah.
But it's still, Lehi offers a unique transition of this long held commitment to what we were built on.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a big deal.
I think it is too. I agree. And that's part of what you guys have, is this heritage. And this rich family, I can tell your family's very unified. I mean, as far as and part probably because of this heritage, right? But and working side by side, that's one of the benefits of working together, is you do end up, making relationships when you're working together, right? Another good principle. Thank you for joining us on Roots and Branches of Lehi. I hope today's story helped you feel a little more connected to the people who make up our community. Remember, every person here has a unique story, and together, we're what makes Lehi feel like home. If you know someone who would be a great fit for this podcast, please fill out the form in the show notes so we can reach out and schedule an interview. We'd love to hear from you. A big thank you to our sponsors, the Work Harding Home Mortgage Team and Play Harding Nightly Vacation Rentals, for supporting this show and helping us bring our community closer together. Until next time, keep growing those roots and reaching out to your branches. Take care.